Hey guys, here we go with Chapter 1, Introduction to Structural Units. The first thing I want you to be able to know is the definition of anatomy and also physiology. So anatomy is the study of the shape of an organism or a body structure, and then the relationship of one body part to another. So if we're talking about what it is, what it looks like, that's going to be anatomy. Physiology is the study of the function of body parts. So how do they function? For instance, if we're looking at the anatomy of the stomach, we're going to be aware of the different parts of the stomach, the layers of the stomach, what it looks like. It's a J-shaped organ. But with physiology, we want to know, what does it do? For instance, the stomach produces secretions that help to break down food, especially protein. So a major function of the stomach is breaking protein down, digesting protein. Make sure you know the definition of anatomy and also of physiology. Also in lab, you're going to be studying some of the different terminology associated with anatomy and physiology. So you want to know anatomical position. And this guy here in the picture is standing in an anatomical position. Notice his palms are forward, his eyes are forward, his face, he's facing the observer, and he's standing up. So this is what you want to picture as you're thinking about all these other body parts. This is a list of directional terms, and you'll notice the terminology anterior and ventral really mean the same thing. Anterior means in front of, and ventral means belly side, so our belly side is facing forward. Posterior or dorsal means back or in back of. So if we're talking about something's in back of something else, we're going to use the term posterior to. For instance, the sternum is anterior to the heart, or the heart is posterior to the sternum. Cephalic means toward the skull or the head, and here's another picture. Caudal means more toward the tail. Notice you have anterior here, the front portion, and then posterior toward the back. Here also you can see the terms medial and lateral. Medial means toward the midline of the body, as if you're looking at the abdomen here, which it's near her belly button or her umbilicus. And lateral means away from the midline. So if you think of a road, the median of the road is in the middle, and the lateral parts would be the shoulders of the road. And then the terms proximal and distal are referring to the arms and the legs. Notice proximal means toward the point where the arm connects to the body, and distal is referring to away from or distant from the attachment of the arm to the body. So we would say the shoulder is proximal to the elbow, or the wrist is distal to the shoulder. And the most distal part of your arm it's going to be the fingertips. The same thing with your thigh and your leg, where the foot is most distal and the hip would be most proximal. You'll also see the terms superior and inferior. And superior means above and inferior means below. So the head is above the neck. The abdominal cavity is inferior to the thoracic cavity. The head being above the neck, the head is superior to the neck. Next, we see body planes and sections. Planes are imaginary dividing lines useful for separating body structures. The section is the cut, so we're just going to call these planes. And sagittal plane is a plane that divides a body or a structure into left and right parts. If we're dividing it left from right, we're going to call it a sagittal plane. Here we can see in the middle a sagittal plane. Notice the body is being cut left from right. Another type of plane is called a coronal plane or a frontal plane. And this is going to be a cut. You can see this on your left, dividing the anterior part of the body or structure from the posterior part. The third type of plane is a transverse or horizontal plane, and this one is going to separate superior from inferior. When these planes are produced as sections are made, then flat surfaces result, and these are often what you're going to see in textbooks. You'll see different sections. You'll also notice there are cavities of the body. The dorsal cavity, remember, means toward the back, and so the dorsal cavity is going to be made up of the cranial cavity, which encloses the brain, and then also the spinal cavity enclosing the spinal cord. The thoracic cavity is that which lies where the lungs are found, and then also extends down to the diaphragm. And you'll notice then that the thoracic cavity is made of that pericardial cavity. Peri means to go around, so this means to go around the heart. This would enclose the heart, and the pleural cavities, which enclose the lungs. The abdominopelvic cavity is a large cavity. The abdominal cavity is going to have most of the organs that are found in the abdominopelvic cavity, but the lower organs are found in the pelvic cavity. The quadrants in the abdominal pelvic cavity are going to divide it up, and you'll notice the lines dividing this cavity intersect, and that intersection point is at the belly button or the umbilicus. The right upper quadrant is actually on your left, but it's the person's right. So be really careful as we're looking at the anatomy. Every time you see right and you're facing the patient, it's your left and their right. Also, there are life functions. All living organisms are capable of carrying on these life functions. And so we're going to be getting to these as we go through this semester. Another concept I wanted to talk to you about is that of cells, tissues, organs, and organ systems. You want to know these terms and know what the definition is for each one. So cells are the basic unit of structure and function of all living things. We're all made up of cells, and some organisms are single cells, some are multicellular, but all organisms are made up of cells. Those cells are going to group together to form tissues. Tissues are a group of cells that have a type of function and also have a common origin in the embryo. Organs are groups of tissues that operate together, or what we call interdependently with each other. A good example of an organ system would be the digestive system, and one organ in that system would be the stomach. Homeostasis is the ability of the body to regulate its internal environment. We want to be able to regulate it within set parameters, which we call set points. And those set points are established. For instance, your temperature is a set point of about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit or 37 degrees Celsius. If you go outside on a hot day, the temperature of the surface of your skin is going to be warmer than normal. There are sensors there. Those sensors then send a signal to the control center, which is typically your brain. And this muscle or gland is going to change in order to bring your temperature back up to normal. The picture here on this page gives you the opposite example using sweat glands. Two ways we can establish homeostasis and regulate it would be through negative feedback and positive feedback. The example I just gave you is that of negative feedback. Most homeostatic mechanisms use this type of feedback. It's going to operate around a set value, or what we call a set point, and it responds to reverse the disturbance. So if the disturbance is causing your temperature to increase, then your body's going to do something to decrease the temperature, like sweating, for instance. Positive feedback will enhance the stimulus. In other words, it brings it away from set point, not bringing it towards set point. So an example would be childbirth, where contractions occur, and they occur faster and faster and closer together until the baby's born. So that's positive feedback, where you have an increase in a level of an event. But once the baby's born, then that event discontinues. Metabolism is the sum of chemical reactions in the human body. And two different terms I want you to know associated with metabolism would be anabolism, which is a building up process where materials are put together, simpler ones are put together to form something a little more complex. Like, for instance, if you were forming a protein in your body, amino acids would be put together to form that protein, and that we call that anabolism. Now, if you eat a protein, catabolism takes place, where your body has to break that protein down into those amino acids again. So anabolism, building up, small to big, and catabolism is breaking down, taking something larger or more complex and breaking it down into something simpler. I hope this has helped. Make sure you study over this information before you try to take your quiz or even attempt the homework. Look over it, read over it. If you got the book, read the book. It's going to help you to go over it over and over again. And if you have any questions, you can always email me. Please know I'm available to help.